Good morning, girls. I hope you all are well and staying safe. Welcome to this first video of English literature in which we are going to study a new chapter, The Little Match Girl. I've already finished this chapter in one section, so for them it's going to be a recapitulation of what has already been taught. Kindly keep your textbooks ready. So I begin with the introduction about the author given on page 87. Please follow what I'm reading in your books. Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish writer best known for his fairy tales. Now, Danish are the citizens of Denmark, and Hans was best known for his fairy tales. Fairy tales are something that is imaginary, that is not real. However, his stories are not restricted to children alone and have themes of universal appeal that transcend age and culture. So, the kind of stories Hans wrote, they were not only read by children but by people of all age groups as it has universal appeal and it went beyond age, beyond culture, and beyond countries. Anderson had a very unhappy childhood, and much of his stories reflect or shows this sadness dealing with loss and death. So one of the main themes which Anderson used in his writing was the theme of poverty, sadness, loss and death. And this we'll see in this story, The Little Match Girl. Set around Christmas, the story tells of a little girl who, unable to sell her matchsticks, dies of cold and hunger on the street, even as people are celebrating the birth of Christ child inside their warm, cozy homes or warm, comfortable homes. The tale here refers to the story, is rich in irony. Irony is a way of speaking that shows that you are joking or that you mean the opposite. Imagery is something which you can visualize or you can visually describe, and symbols emphasizing or stressing the need for pity, compassion, or mercy for those who have so much less than we do. Now, coming to the title of the story, why the author has chosen this title. That is The Little Match Girl, because it's a story about a little girl who has tried to sell matchboxes throughout the day without any success. See, we see the entire world is celebrating the New Year's Eve. She too tries to celebrate the evening in her own way with her matchsticks and eventually dies a very pitiful death. So we see the title which the author has chosen, The Little Match Girl, is very apt. Now, very briefly, I'll talk about the setting of the story. The story is set on a New Year's Eve when it is snowing and it is extremely cold. The entire world is celebrating Christmas, but here we see that this little girl is in a very pitiable state as she's freezing in cold, she's inadequately dressed, she's barefooted and hungry. Girls, Christmas, as you all know, it's a festival of loving, sharing, and caring for others. But contrary to these festivities, we see that this little girl is all alone. She is roaming on the streets trying to sell matchsticks, but there are no buyers for her. This sad state of the girl, it makes us realize how people who live under extreme poverty without basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing, they fight every moment to survive and often they succumb to death, as does this little girl in the story. Here you can also relate to the present lockdown due to coronavirus. Who are the people who are suffering? The people who are suffering the most are the poor, destitute, the marginalized. This consists of the daily wage laborers, the migrant workers, etc., who have got families to support. It is not the rich who are suffering, it is not us who are really suffering. We are so blessed that we are provided with everything in the comforts of our houses. We are safe, we are secure, we do not have to bother about anything. So, girls, be grateful to God and especially to your parents and never take them for granted. And whenever you get an opportunity to help the needy people, please do so. So, on this positive note, I begin with the chapter. Page 88. The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. It was bitterly cold, snow was falling, and darkness was gathering, for it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. So, the very first line of the chapter describes the weather conditions. So, what sort of weather was it? It was extremely cold, it was snowing, it was getting dark, plus, it was the last evening of the old year. It suggests that it was 31st of December. In the cold and gloom, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot through the streets. So, generally, we see that in such cold and gloomy weather, people do not venture out of their houses. But here we see that this little girl, though it was cold, it was very gloomy, she was walking on the streets without any covering over her head, without any covering for her feet. She had been wearing slippers, it is true, when she had left home. But what good were they? They had been her mother's. So you can imagine how big they were. Okay, it's true that when she left home, she was wearing slippers, but those slippers belonged to her mother and they were oversized. And you all know how difficult it is for us to walk in oversized slippers or footwears. The little girl had lost them as she ran across the street to escape from two carriages that were being driven terribly fast. So, poor thing. She just had a pair of slippers, and that too she lost them when she was trying to cross the road, trying to save herself from the two carriages that were being very rashly driven. One slipper could not be found, and a boy had run off with the other, saying that it would come in very handy as a cradle. Now, cradle is a baby's cot someday when he had children of his own. So, one slipper she could not find, and the other one was taken away by a boy who said that he would use it as a baby's cot when he had children of his own. So, now she's left without any slippers. So the little girl walked about the streets on her naked feet, which were red and blue with the cold. So it was extremely cold, there was no protection for her feet, and due to excess of cold, her naked feet had turned red and blue. In her old apron, she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. So her hand was full with matchsticks, apron's pocket was full of matchsticks because she hadn't been able to sold any. Nobody had bought any from her, and no one had given her a single penny all day. So, poor thing. Whole day she had been walking around, she had been struggling to sell a single matchstick, but she was not successful. So, she did not earn a single penny that day. She crept along, shivering and hungry, the picture of misery. Poor little thing. So still she did not lose hope. Still she was making her way. Though she was shivering, she was hungry, still she went along walking, and she was a picture of misery, sadness. Poor little thing. The snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck. But she did not think of her appearance now. So it was snowing, the soft snow, it fell on her long golden hair. Long golden hair, here you can say she had blonde hair, which prettily about her neck, curled about her neck, but she was least bothered about her appearance. What she could only see was lights. Lights were shining in every window, and there was a glorious smell of roast goose in the street. For this was New Year's Eve, and she could not think of anything else. So, what she could see that point of time was only lights. So all the windows, okay, what she could see through the windows was brightly lit lights, beautiful decorations, and from every street she could get that delicious smell of the roast goose. Now roast goose, it's a traditional meal of Europeans, especially during occasions, especially Christmas. So that particular moment, okay, she was exhausted, she was very hungry, and when a person is hungry, what a person could think about is only food. So she could just get the aroma of such delicacies coming from every house. She huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, and one of which projected further out into the street than the other. But though she tucked her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. So she was hungry, she was exhausted, she did not have that stamina to walk any further. So what she did, She sat there down in a heap in a corner and she folded her legs under her. But still, she felt colder and colder. Remember, girls, she did not have any warm clothes. She did not have any, she was not wearing any footwear. She did not dare to go home, for she had sold no matches and earned not a single penny. Her father would be sure to beat her, and besides, it was so cold at home, for they had nothing but the roof above them, and the wind whistled through that, even though the largest cracks were stuffed with straw and rags. And usually, what happens when we feel cold, the first place that we remember is our warm, cozy, comfortable beds and our warm houses. But she could not think of doing so. She did not dare to go home because she knew that her father would surely beat her because she did not sell any matchstick. She did not earn a penny that day. Plus, her house was a very poor house. It had big cracks. Those cracks were stuffed with straw and rags, but that was not sufficient to keep the house warm. So she did not have any desire to go back to her house. Her thin hands were almost numb with cold. Okay, it was extremely cold. Her hands had become numb. She was unable to move her hands. And that particular moment, only one desire she had. And what was that desire? One temptation. Only one. If only one, she just pulled a match from the packet, strike it on the wall, and warm her fingers. So that was the temptation that she was going through that particular time when she was exhausted, she was hungry, she was feeling cold, her hands were going numb. That what if I just pull out one small match from the packet, strike it on the wall, and warm my fingers? So you can just picturize this entire scene, girls. Imagine. So if you compare your life with this girl, how blessed you all are to have such lovely parents who do not leave any stone unturned to fulfill all your desires. Before you ask, all your desires are fulfilled by your parents. But there are so many like her who are not lucky. You see so many children begging on the streets, traffic jams, working in the factories in very unhygienic conditions. What kind of childhood are they living? So, if you compare your life to theirs, you can without doubt say that you are the fortunate ones. So, learn to appreciate what your parents do for you and always be grateful to them, listen to them, and be grateful to God and develop that attitude of gratitude towards them. So, on this positive note, I wind up my today's class. The remaining chapter, girls, we are going to do in next video. Thank you.